Hey everyone, on today's show we're going to be talking about the Backup Bible, an all-encompassing vendor-agnostic guide to all things backup and recovery. We've even got the author of the Backup Bible on today's show, Eric Siron, good friend of mine, fantastic resource when it comes to backup, DR, and recovery. We're going to be talking about backup strategies, common pitfalls, even how to get the CEO to care and, see value in backup and DR. Coming up next on the DOJO podcast. Well, everyone, and welcome to the DOJO podcast, the podcast where we teach you the special skills needed to be successful in the world of IT. My name is Andy Syrewicze, your host of the DOJO podcast, and with me I've got a good friend of mine, Eric Siron. How's it going?
Good. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, doing good. Can't complain. It's good to have you on the show. I know you'll be a regular contributor to the show, but, some of the listeners that may be tuning in today may not be familiar with you. Can you kind of give them a quick introduction?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Eric Siron. I've been writing about Hyper-V for a number of years, and recently I picked up a pen on backup, trying to hopefully convince everyone that this is an important subject. So thanks for having me on.
That is a very good segue into our topic today. And really, we're talking about the Backup Bible in today's episode. And, the Backup Bible, if I would summarize it, is designed to be a vendor-agnostic, all-encompassing ebook that talks about, backup and recovery 101 all the way to, 300-400 level backup and recovery, helping readers build that backup and DR strategy. Really, I think what I want to start with is really talk about why. What was the driving reason behind authoring this ebook, Eric, and the reason that you wanted to get it out there?
Well, the biggest thing is that people just really kind of don't take it seriously. Or if they do, they don't have time to take it seriously. And it's difficult to get buy-in, I think, at all the tiers that really need to be involved. So a lot of it was, first of all, to bring it back front and center, and then to hopefully give people a little bit of a boost when they need to basically explain to other people that, this is more important than just a couple people in the IT department here and there.
Well, this is more important than a couple of people in the IT department. Oh, that's the perfect description of when trying to explain backup and DR to upper management, right? I think in my experience, what I've run into when it comes to backup and DR with, I spent a lot of time in the service provider space, and I think the most common thing I ran into with organizations that didn't have a solid plan in place or even functional backups, it was either they didn't have time or managing backups is boring, right? Quote unquote boring. Is that kind of what you've run into in your experience as well?
Oh, absolutely. You name an excuse, I've heard it. And because I did backup almost exclusively for like 4 years at a previous position, and it was bad. I don't have a whole lot of good stories, but I have a lot of terrible ones. So
terrible stories and backup and DR are not two things that should go together.
No, but people don't call me until it's on fire. You know how that is. So,
and that's what backup and recovery is for.
Yes, and then I'm the guy going, yeah, that wasn't any good either. Sorry.
Oh no. Well, we come back to the whole managing backups may be boring statement, but I would argue, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, but I would argue that managing backups is at least better than managing printers and maybe email.
I guess it depends on where you're at with boring, because my printers were always like terrifying and horrifying and driving me to drink, and usually not boring though, because a boring printer is one that just prints paper, and I don't run across many of those.
Yeah. I like to brag that I once, won a fist fight with a Zebra label printer one time. But I'm not going to go into that story right now. Anyway, we're getting off track.
Those are mean. I have
right. Anyway, back to our topic here. So, essentially, the driving force behind this ebook, if I can summarize, is IT pros either basically don't give backup and DR the attention that it really requires. And, I guess before we really drill into more of the details, can you just kind of give us a quick rundown of what's in the book, where does it start, and where does it take the readers?
It starts with the assessment of what matters, because I think a lot of times people are either just dump everything in and not really think about it, or they go the other way and like, well, I got to have this thing and this is all that matters and whatever else, if we fit it in it. So it's the idea to, instead of just, taking 3 or 4 minutes to set up a backup job and then walking away from it, it's to spend the time to go through the environment and get other people involved. A lot of times we look at DR as an IT thing, and it's not. Backup is an IT thing, but DR is much bigger. And even in backup, you still have to get other people involved because we can only know so much. I mean, we know how it works, but other people know what the value is, I guess, is a good way to put it. And then from there, it kind of goes through, and these are the things that you need to look for when you're purchasing a solution, and then architecting a solution, and then keeping it going. Checking in on it.
Right. Don't set it and forget it, right?
Do not set it and forget it.
I hate it. I even see some vendors set it and forget it. Our backups are us. And I'm just like, why? No, don't ever set it and forget it on your backups,
No, things change too fast. It's just, no. And
treat your backups like your mother. Check in on her often.
No excuses or lies to anybody.
That's
You're
right.
not doing it.
That's right. That's right. So I think, kind of zeroing in on one of the things you said near the beginning of your explanation, really, backup and DR is, while of course there is a technical component to it, it's less about the technical how-to, because, that can just be handled, right? I mean, the technology is the technology. But really the important aspect of any backup and DR strategy is identifying those key stakeholders within your organization, or if you're a service provider, within each organization you provide services for, right? And really you want to get the knowledge that they have about the data that lives within that organization. Because like you said, the value, they're the ones that know what the value of the data is. So really, again, it's less about the technology, right, and more about the people and the data more than anything else, I think is what you're getting at, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of times, like, you go into like an accounting department and find out just how much of it runs off like this one master Excel sheet that sits on somebody's C drive. Right. And the people who know the value of it are not the ones running the department. They're the ones who are doing the day-to-day work. And so you can't just assume that, well, I'm in IT, I know everything, and I have access to the file server. Yeah, that's not how reality goes at all.
Right.
So.
Right. And I think one thing that I see quite regularly when you've got an IT department trying to architect and put together a backup and DR plan is they just assign a blanket RPO and RTO to their data, right? Just like, 4 weeks RTO seems fine, and 2 hours RPO or a day RPO or whatever. They just kind of arbitrarily pick values, it seems. And I think more often than not, I've seen that is more driven by their hardware capabilities, the amount of storage they have, the performance that it has. If they're in an organization with a lot of data churn, us IT folks, we tend to react and adjust based on technical information, right? But when it comes to backup and DR, like you said, the value of the data comes into play as well. So I'm sure you've run into this as well. I can't tell you how many times I've run into a situation where, HR's expectation or the C-suite's expectation is, hey, we can go back and recover data from 4 years ago or 7 years ago if, any industry compliance comes into play, right? But maybe that's not the reality in the IT department, right?
Right.
So really, I think a lot of the book talks about getting IT and those stakeholders talking, right? And I think, if we talk about common pitfalls, it's probably one of them. I suspect you would agree.
Oh, yeah, because the people in those C-suites and HR and whatnot just expect that you're the computer guy, Well, okay.
Yep.
Sure.
If it plugs into the wall, it's IT's responsibility, right?
That's right. And you know everything about it, and nothing will ever go wrong because I can just call your number and you'll come fix it. And that's just how it is. And,
what do you mean you can't tell me how to use my Dynamics application?
yeah. Yeah. How come you didn't know to back this up for 35 years?
Trust
so what
me.
if we've only been in business for 8?
Right. Trust me, you don't want me giving you accounting advice. I'm just saying. I can install Dynamics. I wouldn't know the first thing about actually using it. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Click here.
Hey, look, the application started. My job's done.
Yes. You've exhausted my knowledge. I'm out.
Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again?
Right.
Okay, so we kind of talked about, the main part being getting those stakeholders talking. And I guess, once we start going that route, and once I've seen IT departments understand that and start roping in those stakeholders, I think one of the more common issues I've seen crop up at that point of the process is you'll run into somebody in the C-suite, God forbid it's the CEO, but it does happen, who just doesn't see the value, right? I mean, there's so many C-suite executives I've run into in my career that unfortunately just don't see the value. IT tends to be foreign to some of them, right? And they just, why do we need backup for more than a day or two? Or you've run into that yourself, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So there's not a great answer because people are different, and so what works on this person may not work on the next. So there's always that. Part of it is you hope that this sort of company is siloed enough to where he can just say, well, take it to the CIO and let him deal with it. And then, your CIO is a data person, and so they're gonna get that. And other cases, even the CFO. Because I'm sure you remember the days when IT was a department of the accounting.
Oh
right?
yeah,
we
still
belong
is.
to them.
Still is in some organizations.
In a lot of places, yes, it is.
Yep.
So, but your CFOs, they understand the value of the data, and sometimes you just can't. And then part of it is as an MSP, like you were talking about. Sometimes you just have to walk in and go, "We're going to sell you a complete package," and you're just not going to have to worry about it. But you're also going to have to give us some leverage. Unfortunately, when it really comes down to it, you're sitting there with I have the one size fits all, but I need your legal people to tell me what I have to do because I don't want you getting sued. And you can kind of do that too. It's like, hey, I'm just trying not to get sued here, and I don't know what the laws are related to this sort of data.
Right.
So you can sometimes get some help on that, and then a lot of times you just wind up with, we're not going to give you a budget. You have to go get some free backup software to hold this up. And
oof. That's no fun for anyone.
It's not, and it's like I kind of am upset with the industry that they have proliferated so much free backup software that now it's expected, and then, well, if that's what your data is worth to you, then,
right. That's a good point.
Okay.
It used to be whenever I'd walk into a situation where there was some sort of industry compliancy at play, like HIPAA or PCI or ITAR. I used to be this way, and I know a lot of MSPs that are this way. They'll see an organization with requirements like that, and they're like, nope, I'm staying away, I'm not touching it, right? Because of all the red tape and all the complexities that are involved with that. But when it comes to backup and DR, having that conversation with the powers that be for that organization, I found it actually makes things a lot easier, because you as the IT person have a very easy out, right? You can be like, well, ITAR says that, we need to be able to recover this much data and with this time, and here are the requirements, on government letterhead, here are the requirements, Mr. CEO, and, if we don't do that, you understand what the implications are. That's an easy out. But for those organizations that don't have those requirements, I found that, at least for me, what always tended to work was kind of laying out an example, oh crap situation, right?
Which, here's the bad side to that, is that works once, maybe twice.
Right.
But when you go in there and go, okay, it's time to refresh all that hardware that you bought. I got to buy new tapes. I got to buy new storage disks, whatever. They're like, okay, so 3 years ago you came in here and you told me the sky was falling. and you're talking all these natural disasters and theft and all this, and none of that happened, and we dropped X $1,000 on it. We're cutting your budget in half because none of that happened like you promised. So you do have to be careful on using fear as a selling point, because
Yes.
there's a long-term solution. It's pretty bad. It needs to come down to statistics. I really believe that you need to show that because the problem is everybody takes past performance as the indicator of future performance.
Right.
Right. This is how we predict the future. We look at what has been going on and say this is what tomorrow holds.
Yep.
The problem is the longer a given piece of technology runs, the more likely it is to fail. That's how that goes. It's regression towards the mean, where everything eventually breaks.
Yep.
So you have to walk in here and say, statistically saying, every day that we go, we are in greater risk of something happening. So your odds are getting worse, not better. But it can't be a fair thing. It just got to be, this is going to happen and we have to be ready for it.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Right. It's just certain as the sun sets, and taxes and all the other things.
That's a really interesting segue into an experience that I ran through kind of along these same lines. So, back in my MSP days, I did a lot of work with manufacturing clients, and the owner of this one particular company was an engineer by trade. He wasn't doing engineering work anymore, but he was the owner of the company. They were doing very well, but his mindset was that of an engineer. So in order to convince him, kind of going back to the thing about where the longer that the equipment runs, the more likely it is to fail, what I did that finally convinced him of the importance of backup and DR was actually go and pull, the failure rates for the types of hard drives that he had, and the age and the number of reads and writes and all that type of stuff. Once he had hard analytical data in his hands, he was like, oh crap, we need to do this.
Yes.
Where do I sign? What do we need to buy? So it's really a people issue, right? I mean, you have to know, whether it's the CFO or your CIO or your CEO, whoever is making that decision, you need to know kind of what makes that person tick if they're being particularly difficult when it comes to trying to convey the severity of needing proper backup and DR, right?
Right. So this is a people problem. It really is.
Yep. Definitely. So, and my mother said I couldn't just sit in a closet and play with computers all day for a job, right? So,
right.
That's the second time I've referenced my mother in the same podcast. So I don't know if there's something to that or what, but maybe it's because I saw her this last weekend. That must be it.
There you go. The lessons, or maybe the lessons are just sticking.
Maybe that's what it is. So, now thinking back to the structure of the ebook. So it's designed to take maybe somebody who knows nothing about backup and DR from start to finish, generate that backup and DR plan, get the key stakeholders involved. If I recall correctly, there's a bunch of appendices as part of the ebook as well too, with worksheets, some blueprints, and that type of stuff. Can you give us a little bit of information on what those entail, and what kind of value that that readers will get out of it?
My real goal with those is to make you think, because if you have to fill in a form and there's a blank there and you don't know what to put in it, then that gets you going to go out and find something, because I've noticed that people really don't like to leave things empty on forms. It's just a thing that we do. And maybe sometimes you look at it and hopefully somebody's out there looking and going, he forgot all this stuff. Well, we got to get this too. That's what I really want you to do, is you identify what I didn't do for you, and you go out there and make that happen. Because again, like we have been talking about this whole time, if you just go out there and say, start this backup job and backup D, is that doing it? And how long,
right.
There's just too many questions there to just throw at it like that. And I want you to look at that and go, okay. And it's a little bit easier, I think, because like when you read a book, I know you know how it is, you can only keep so much in your mind at one time. Whereas a page or two long form, a little bit easier to digest in a single sitting, I feel. So
yeah, definitely.
That was really the purpose behind it.
I mean, those forms, they really helped me out, because like, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, I mean, so having it all documented and having it all one spot, this is the information I need. Once I've gathered that all up, now I can start making some informed decisions, right? And then, like you said, once it's all in place, knowing that information, knowing how long I have to retain the data for, knowing how quickly I need to be able to recover it, now I can vet those technical solutions. Now I know what pieces of the implementation that I need to keep an eye out on, to make sure we adhere to all those requirements that were set, again, by all the key stakeholders in the organization. So, well, I think we're getting pretty close to the end of the episode today. Is there anything else you want to add on the Backup Bible? Any piece that you maybe suggest that they start with or focus on first? I think what I've taken away is the people part of it, right? Would you have any other recommendation that they really focus in on?
The people is the biggest thing. Figure out what the people who can write the checks, figure out what they need to hear from you to get those checks written and protect your stuff correctly. And you also need to dig down and figure out who the people are who really know what the important data is, because a lot of times they're not who you might think.
Right.
You may find just like Sally in the back corner has actually been running the whole show for the last 3 years, and it's just how it is in a lot of places.
That's such a good point. Again, thinking back to the manufacturing space, I can identify several situations where it was, Bob in the quality lab. He's the one that knows about this, old 5,000 line Excel file that tracks all their parts or something, right? There's always, there's something weird in every organization. So yeah, definitely. Yep. That's fantastic advice. Well, all right. Well, appreciate your time as always, Eric. We'll of course, looking forward to having you on again here for a future episode. So thanks for your time and thanks for coming to talk to us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And everyone out there listening, we appreciate you tuning into the podcast today. If you're looking for more IT-centric content, feel free to check out the Altero Dojo at www.altero.com/dojo. We got all kinds of great content there. Again, Eric is one of our regular authors. I've been known to author things from time to time. We've got videos, blogs, webinars, additional ebooks. We cover everything from Hyper-V to Windows Server, Office 365, VMware, backup and DR, like this segment. We kind of cover a lot of stuff these days. So feel free to check that out. If you'd like to join the conversation, we also have some forums that Eric and I are on fairly regularly. Those are at dojoforums.altero.com. And all these links, don't feel like you have to quick write them down. I'm going to go ahead and make sure they make it into the episode description. If you're watching this on YouTube, below this video, or on your podcast platform, we'll make sure they're in the description there as well. And of course, you can follow Eric and I on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are below our smiling faces here in this video if you're watching, or again, if you're listening to this on the road, just check out the episode description when you're done driving. Obviously, don't look at it while you're driving, right? But we'll make sure the link to our social profiles is there as well. Other than that, we'll let you go. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Dojo podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one.